you're not dogmatic about these things. You go in and out of keto, but you're always eating clean food. You're always eating healthy. You don't go eat in and out of eating junk food, things like that. So it's always clean
Correct.
food. It's always whole foods. And uh, but you did do an experiment where you went full carnivore, didn't you? Can you tell
I
us about
did,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, probably since 2018, I would do like 30 days of carnivore, 45, 60. And then last year I decided to do, all right, I'm going to do 90 days and 90 days straight. I'm going to test as well and get some data. And of course, this is my own personal N of one experience, but I wanted to get some data. So on day one, I did comprehensive lab work. Of course, I did my thyroid panel, full thyroid panel. I did my full lipid panel with the NMR, looking at particle sizes, inflammatory markers, hormones, CBC. I mean, full blood work. And then I also did a stool test on day one to look at my gut microbiome and diversity and different bacteria relationships. I put on a continuous glucose monitor, although there was nothing really exciting there because my glucose levels were just stable the whole time. Yeah, exactly. There was nothing really exciting there. And then I, of course, looked at my Aura Ring stats, looking at heart rate variability, deep sleep, REM sleep, how many times I was getting up at night compared to when I was not doing carnivore. And I went full in 90 days. And it was interesting. There was a lot of interesting moving pieces here. The first thing that I noticed personally, without looking at the lab work, was that I started to get better sleep. My deep sleep and REM sleep was increased. I was waking up less times throughout the night. Not that I was waking up a ton, but it cut that dramatically. So I was getting more restful sleep. I had more energy. What was interesting, Anthony, I already thought I was pretty lean when I started doing this, but I lost 16 pounds in 90 days
Oh,
and
yeah.
6% body fat, but the muscle mass stayed the same. I have the in-body
Yeah.
scans. The muscle mass didn't go down. It wasn't muscle, it was mostly body fat. So my
Nice.
abs were just more visible during that time frame. I didn't realize I needed to do that, but my body, I guess, needed to do that. The most interesting part was the stool test because when I got my results back from day one, the results came in about 3 weeks into the carnivore experience experiment. And the report showed that my diversity was average. My gut microbiome diversity was average. It wasn't poor, it wasn't amazing, it was average. And the recommendations on that lab report was to eat less keto foods, less meat, more plants, more vegetables, more polyphenol rich foods, pretty much like a predominantly like plant-based diet with a lot of fiber to increase the diversity. Well, I did the complete opposite because I'm doing carnivore. So I went 90 days and then I retested that same stool test. And you would think, not you, Anthony, but most people would think that, man, your gut's going to look destroyed. You did the exact opposite of what most gut microbiome specialists would say to do, including this company. And actually, my diversity increased after 9 days, 90 days, excuse me. My keystone bacteria, I had five keystone bacteria show up on day 90 that did not show up on day one. I had seven core bacteria show up on day 90 that did not show up on day one. Akkermansia increased. The bacteria relationships were improved as well. So everything in my gut microbiome improved after 90 days doing the complete opposite. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then I want to share a little bit about the blood work and what I saw with that.
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic. Having that point of data and people, well, it's an N of one, but well, we have N of one times 10,000 at this point because a lot of people are doing this and finding very similar results. And the argument is, well, you're eating a bunch of processed food and garbage, and now you change it. No, you were eating a very clean diet. You're eating I
Right.
mean, for over a decade, you were eating
Yep.
a very
Correct.
clean omnivorous diet, including meat, but also including a lot of fibrous plants. And that's the whole point. They say, oh, you should eat a lot of high fiber plants because that fiber is so good for the microbiome. Um, Compared to what? Because if you're comparing it to the standard American diet that most people are eating, then changing that to a more whole food approach, getting some fruits and vegetables that have fiber in it, you're not just adding those things that have fiber, you're also replacing the other garbage things that maybe aren't so good. And so you have an improved microbiome and we don't know all that much about the microbiome. I work with a guy in Perth. He's an ICU specialist. He's an intensivist, and but he's also a researcher. I mean, that's his main gig is doing research on the microbiome. He has over 200 peer-reviewed publications on the microbiome. And I was talking to him about this and what he knows. It was just basically, it was just like, yeah, I think it's really big. I think once we figure out what the hell's going on and all this stuff, I think we're going to really understand a lot more about human disease. It was just like, this is
Wow.
the guy with over 200 publications. He's saying we don't know jack, and
Yeah.
but I think it's big. And once we figure it out, then I think it's going to be very very telling. But that I mean that's from the horse's mouth. I mean this guy is one of the world's experts in this, and he's saying clearly like, we just don't understand this well enough at the moment. But I think it's very important. And so the idea that we just know perfectly how to manipulate this stuff, and oh yeah, it's add more fruits and vegetables and fiber and all that sort
Take
of stuff.
probiotics and that'll solve everything.
That's it. Yeah, except that those studies have come out now that probiotics are actually horrible and don't do any good. I spoke to a
Useless.
researcher. Yeah, he's a gastroenterologist down in Perth, and he actually did his lab was hired by a probiotics company to do a large scale study because they were shorter, like very small, like 6 person something like that study. Not powered high enough. You can't get any real information off that, showing that their product was good. So they're like, oh yeah, look, studies have shown. But now they knew that that was bullshit, so they wanted to get like a bigger study, and so they hired this guy to do that. I met him at a conference, and he was saying that so it was a large scale, well-designed study, and it showed that like no, it doesn't help. It wasn't any good. And so they were getting ready to publish it, and they got letters from the lawyers saying that like if you publish that, we're going to sue you. Like this is our property,
Wow.
and we paid for it, we own it. You can't use it. And so he's like, all right.
Awful.
So the abstract is out there, but they
Mm.
couldn't publish the actual full study. But subsequently, there have been publications showing the exact same thing. So this is reproducible, but this doesn't really do much. The other thing too is that people forget that there are entire civilizations that eat this way or eat like a more natural animal-based sort of diet, like the Inuit and the Maasai. I don't know if they've studied the Maasai guts, but and they get no fiber. But there have been some on the Inuit, and they've actually shown a very diverse and healthy microbiome. So I would imagine that if you're eating what you're supposed to eat, you're going to have the microbes and microbiome that you're supposed to eat, just like the oral biome, a very different oral biome when you eat this way too. You don't get cavities as such, and other sorts of things. Animals in the wild, they've got teeth, they've got all these bacteria in and around them that are not causing harm, right? Because they're appropriate to them and that species. They don't have dentists. They're not, sterilizing their mouth every day, every time after they eat. And yet, they're the only animals that don't have teeth right out. We're the only, they all don't have their teeth right out. We all have our teeth right out,
Mm.
except the ones living in the wild that don't have dentists and don't have people telling them, well, you have to eat this way or whatever.
Right.
Fine. Some that eat more sugar. That was an interesting one, looking at the Hadza who eat more honey. And the men who are out there getting more honey, they actually have worse teeth than the women because women get less honey because they don't bring as much back because they eat it while they're out. And so that could be something there too. But you know, the thing is that
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor at Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
it's interesting you say, well, you got these new species and strains,
Yeah.
and and so why is that? You know, I think it's the oral biome. I think that the bacteria in your mouth do change. And every bite that you're chewing up, bacteria from your mouth do get in that food and go down in with that bolus of food. Now, if you're just drinking a probiotic or something like that, or you just eat spoonfuls of yogurt, that's going to go in your stomach acid and that's all going to get destroyed by and large. But if you're eating it with the food, it could work in. This is theoretical. Could work in, but how else is it doing it? Work into the food and sort of get mixed into the middle of that bolus of food and sort of like a Trojan horse be able to
Mm,
sort of get a few of those by the guards, you know?
interesting.
And so that's what I would expect is happening because otherwise, maybe they're just there, they are there, but they're just in such small supply they didn't show up on the microbiome test. That's possible too, but it's
Yep.
it's sort of comes down to one of those two, unless you got like a fecal transplant you're not telling us about, you
Yeah,
know?
I didn't do that.
Yeah,
Although I'm not opposed to it, but I didn't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Or the oral microbiome. That makes sense. I also think maybe the stress, like it was a dramatic, well, not a dramatic change for me because I was eating mostly clean, as you mentioned, but I did switch to no carbohydrates, no plants, and I was having that before. So there was an adaptation period. So maybe the stress could have forced the bacteria to multiply or increase the
yeah.
diversity. Because I know there's studies that show fasting does it, that fasting increases diversity because of the stress. I think maybe that I shifted into a 90 straight days, the stress, the positive stress, of course, might have contributed to the diversity as well. That was one of my thoughts.
Yeah, well, and fasting too, what's interesting about that is that it does the same sort of thing in principle as eating, like a more, just clean, call it an elimination diet, but a straightforward diet like a carnivore diet, where you're breaking down and absorbing 98+% of the meat that you're eating. So very little is getting through there, and it's only getting through what is, what I feel is biologically designed for us. And so, the microbes eat, what we eat, and but the thing is too is that if you're eating a bunch of fiber, a bunch of plants, a bunch of those things you can't digest, you can't break down, those will get into the colon, and then that will propagate and support other bacteria that wouldn't be able to you know, sort of come to dominance in that environment otherwise because they wouldn't have like the rich food supply and resources. And so fasting is going to so doing an elimination diet, if you want to call it that, like carnivore, you're getting rid of a lot of things. And so that's going to select for certain bacteria, but also fasting, you're also eliminating a lot of these sorts of things. And so
True.
all of those same bacteria that will be selected out because they don't have enough resources, they're all going to go away. And these other ones that can survive in that environment will come up too. So that's interesting as well. And I just really like that you found these improvements after over a decade of really healthy eating by anybody's standard besides a vegan. And that you were eating clean, whole foods, being
Correct.
very, very careful about what you ate and how you ate, doing fasting, periodically, very slim, very healthy, all these different biomarkers, showing that. And then you went to carnivore and you found other improvements as well on top of that. It was exactly what I found. I've never eaten processed junk food. We would occasionally get something like that. I mean, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've had KFC in my life.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
now if you say about Popeye's chicken, it's going to be more than that. It's probably two hands, but still, it's not all that much. But either way, when I went and I was already, I just noticed that eating carbs when I ate anything with carbs, my back hurt. And it's just like
Mm,
I didn't like my back hurting. It was just like in pain. I was like, all right, that's weird. I'm just gonna avoid that stuff. And so I was just eating just vegetables and lean meat. You're supposed to eat lean meat and not that much. I was trying to slim up. And a lot of vegetables, not a lot of meat. So I was plant-based, right? But I did feel good. It wasn't great. Like I was fully inflamed, couldn't lose weight, tons of water weight, tired all the time, stomach hurt all the time, was always hungry. I just didn't feel good. And then, when I flipped and just dropped all the plants, all the vegetables, and went from eating a little bit of lean meat to a buttload of fatty meat, that it just changed everything. And
mm,
so, the argument is that the only benefits that carnivores get is just that contrast from going from processed food to dropping the processed food. It's completely made up, but that has to be true for their ideology to work. And so they state that without any evidence being asked for or provided. And then people believe that just because, oh, well, this guru that I know and love, they say that, so it must be true. And
mm.
it needs to be true, or else I'm living a lie. And so it's very easy to believe those lies, but it's not true. And it's just like, I never did that. You weren't doing that. And we saw these improvements in those sorts of ways. So yeah, I really like that people are showing that again and again, that it's not just about the processed food. The processed food's horrible, but it's not just about that. That actually there are benefits even on top of that.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
Exactly. Yeah. And me and you are perfect examples of that. We were already eating healthy and we got more benefits going to an animal-based approach. I know I sure did. And ever since I did that 90-day experiment, I've been doing more, mostly carnivore. My current routine has been actually Monday through Saturday, I am full on carnivore, and Sunday I get out with more of a low carb approach. That works for me personally. So that I've been doing that ever since, and I feel incredible. Like I said, 4 years old, and I feel the healthiest I've ever felt in my life. What was interesting too, though, Anthony, was the lab work. Now, of course, when I did my labs, I was pretty healthy on day one. Nothing like my C-reactive protein was under zero point 0.5 on day one, and also on day 90. Homocysteine was single digits. My fasting insulin was 3.2 and then 3.1. So it was already insulin sensitive. But so my labs were great. The most interesting thing though on the labs was the lipid profile. And for those who are interested, by the way, I made a whole YouTube video where I show all my lab work. I show the gut test. I even had Dr. Philip Avadia review the lab work and others, and we kind of interpret. It's like an hour video, so you could just go to YouTube and type in Ben Azadi Carnivore. It's usually the first video that pops up. But with the lipids, my total cholesterol was already high, according to normal standards, on day one. It was around, if I remember correctly, it was over 300 on day one, my total cholesterol, because I was doing keto. On day 90, it went to 450 total cholesterol, 300-ish to 450. My LDL was around, I believe, 150 on day one or 200, somewhere around there. But on day 90, it went to 350, 350. My HDL was optimal both times, over 60 both times. Triglycerides were under 70 both times. Nothing to look at there. But with the LDL, right, 350, right? So I got the particle sizes done because it's not just as you talk about total LDL. It's about, all right, what percentage of that LDL is pattern B, the small sticky variety that's not good, and what percentage is pattern A, large fluffy. That's absolutely really important. And the majority of my LDL particles were, of course, the large, fluffy, healthy variety. I had a very small percentage, optimal percentage of the small, sticky, right? But if I didn't get all those panels done and I simply just looked at my total LDL, total cholesterol, and my doctor, if I didn't understand this and my doctor would interpret it, they would think I'm going to have a heart attack. I got to get you on a statin right away. Wouldn't you agree, Anthony?
Oh, a lot, yeah, most of them, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is funny. It is starting to change, and some of it's changing just from in the opposite direction than it really should be. But sometimes it has to go that way because a lot of people like yourself, coming in and they're extremely healthy, they're doing really well, and then all of a sudden they get these cholesterol numbers, and the doctor goes, "You're gonna die. I mean, you're gonna get a heart attack this week if you don't do something about this." And they truly believe that because that is how they were trained,
Yes.
and they are advocating for you. They do believe that this is the best thing for you is to correct this. I don't agree with them, but that is what they believe, and so they are coming from most of them are coming from a genuine place. There are others that I have my doubts about, but from like people's day-to-day doctor, by and large, will be coming from a good place. Um, and a lot of those, especially the ones that are honest with themselves, when they see a patient like yourself come in and be like, "This is crazy," but they're seeing like crazy healthy otherwise, and everything's really
Yeah.
good. And they're
Inflammation is
like,
low, insulin is A1Cs, I didn't mention it was 5.1. Yeah, everything looked great.
yeah. And and then looking at and they say, okay, well, look, we need to get like some imaging, because cholesterol is not a disease. Atherosclerosis is a disease. And so they say, okay, well, this is gonna be building up plaque. So we should be able to see this grow. And so you get a scan, all of a sudden it's zero. You have zero CAC, you have zero plaque on a coronary angiogram, carotid ultrasound looking at the intimal thickness, and it is 0, 0, 0. And they're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to explain that.
Mm,
The ones that are inquisitive, they want to know why. And they want to go, okay, that's interesting. And you're telling me that you come across this. Okay, this is saying that, okay, yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that research that you're referring to. My mom's doctor was like that. And she was just like, I'd be really interested to see, the research that your son has been doing, because it's like
right.
she reversed her diabetes in 2 months. She's like, this doesn't happen. This has never
Wow.
happened in my whole career. And my mom's doctor was a very bright lady. She was an MD, PhD from Harvard, had a PhD in biochemistry from Harvard, and MD there as
Wow.
well. And so, she's no slouch. And so and she had that inquisitive nature saying like, what the hell did you do? What the hell happened? This doesn't happen. How the hell was it? And then she, had a talk with my mom and she was very interested. She's like, I'd really like to see this research. And so I went and talked to her, sent her a bunch of stuff and, the rest is history. But, um, there are some people that are coming around to this. I mean, even people in this space like Dr. David Unwin in the UK, really nice guy. He's put out a lot of papers on this because he has a lot of patients and he's publishing his patient data. And at first he was getting attacked, roundly attacked, but he saw this work with his patients. And one of his patients came in and he was doing the classic thing of all his colleagues were doing to him, which was, oh, you have to be on diabetes medication, you have to do this, you have to do this. His patient basically hadn't filled her metformin prescription in like 10 months. And he was just like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. I'm going to have to call her in and have a talking to her and say, hey, you need to be better about your diabetes medication. She came in, she'd lost a ton of weight, she was super healthy, and she was pissed. She had a bone to pick with him.
Mm,
And she said, the reason I haven't been taking my metformin is because I don't need to anymore. I don't have diabetes anymore. My blood sugar is completely normal because I found this low carbohydrate approach. And you never told me that eating carbohydrates would turn into sugar and that would raise my blood sugar. You never told me that. I don't think that you're are you how are you an actual doctor? You don't even know that eating carbohydrates raise your blood sugar, and that's a horrible idea in a diabetic who's trying to control their blood sugar. And so they, through their own, inquisitive nature, they just stopped eating carbs, and their blood sugar just came down, 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 and they reversed their own diabetes. And he said that, when you have a patient tell you that, it's like, are you even a doctor? He's
mm,
just like,
wow.
you need to pay attention and you need to sit up and listen. Because they're like, okay, I may have missed something big here. I need to find out what it is. And so then he started looking into it, and there are just thousands of studies on ketogenic diets, large scale randomized controlled trials in humans and animals
Wow.
showing the massive benefits of ketogenic diets to human health and animal health even in for with discrete endpoints and for specific medical issues. And it's the most robustly studied diet that is in the world. And it has the most data behind it, but it doesn't have a product behind it. There's no
Mm,
multi-trillion dollar company behind it that stands to profit from this, like you do from the food and drug companies. And so there's no multi-billion dollar marketing team behind this, pushing this out to everyone, getting it in the medical schools, getting it in the residency programs, teaching it to endocrinologists who are treating diabetes, and going to these big conferences and things like that, sponsoring them, and getting educational sort of things out on the news, and being able to pay for spots on CNN or 60 Minutes, like that lady that came out, saying that no, obesity is
yeah.
100% genetic, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it, all that sort of nonsense. And it turns out that person's on the payroll for Ozempic. And this is just what these companies do. A buddy of mine, my roommate from medical school, he ended up doing his residency in radiology at Yale. So Yale trained interventional radiologist, and now he does slightly different work. And he was on like a morning talk show sort of thing, sort of in his area, and he's talking about like the work he was doing for that company, which is owned by something larger. And he was talking about the benefits of this procedure that they do. And I was like, dude, that was really cool. It's awesome that they brought you on there. It's like how'd that end up going? It's just like, oh, the company just set it up. Yeah, they just pay them, to come on. It's advertising. So they pay them to bring me on to talk about what we do so people find out about it
Hmm.
so that they, can come and get business. That's how that's done. And so all the time you see like a doctor go, oh, doctor's coming in talking about this new procedure and this new thing, that, and the other. They are paying to do that. And so, if there's no benefit behind that. There's no money making operation on the other end of that. People aren't going to spend their own private money to say, hey, we need to get this information out there. It has to actually garner actual real life interest, and that's starting to happen. You're starting to see that
Yeah.
sort of thing, but it's a lot harder, because you can pay to get propaganda out there real quick.
Oh yeah.
And it's much more difficult, you know, doing it the other way around. Um, there are some people that are coming around to this. Even people in this space like Dr. David Unwin in the UK, really nice guy. He's put out a lot of papers on this because he has a lot of patients and he's publishing his patient data. And at first he was getting attacked, roundly attacked, but he saw this work with his patients. And one of his patients